Hello, everyone. This is the Static Site Editor Design Product and UX Research Weekly Sync call for November 9th. We'll jump right into the agenda. And I don't think there were any general FYIs that we need to bring up again from earlier. So the biggest topic I have on the product agenda, I'll just get out of the way now, is that I've been trying to dig through the vast amount of issues and epics that exist and the research that has been completed already, the research issues that we know we need to complete. I have far too many Chrome tabs open, but I'm trying to distill them down into a new epic, a new parent epic that somewhat mirrors how we organized the static site editor, which I thought was very helpful for me, at least, where we had a category maturity epic and there was a little more clear hierarchy of, importance and sequencing. My goal would be to have sub epics under that strategy epic, which I linked in the agenda, that each represent, a main topic or main priority or area that we're going to work on, things like searchable settings or just settings hierarchy and information architecture, things that will contain sub epics and won't necessarily be done in one milestone even, but where we can collect all the research outcomes and we can define success metrics. And then the idea being that this parent epic would be maybe split up. Maybe there'll be one epic that we don't commit to completing in this engagement, where it's just like kind of everything else or longer term projects. But the goal being to define what's that finite period where we're owning this category and what does it look like when we hand it off. So I'm still working on that. It's mostly a shell right now. There's no information in many of these epics, and there's some that I still need to link in here. But that'll be the space to look for over the next 4-5 days. I'd like to get at least a framework in here with basic information before we have our kickoff call at the end of the week. So that's my goal for this week. A lot of these epics and issues are already done. I'm just moving them into the right place to we're not done, but they're already written. So I don't have a ton more work to do. I just need to kind of make sense of it all. And actually, Michael, the spreadsheet you sent me where you broke up design tasks and stuff has been helpful too, to kind of parse through themes and fit them into these epics. So I'm using that as a reference as well.
Cool.
And I see that's a good segue to your first topic.
Yeah, that's helpful.
I didn't even I promise.
No, I think it's good that we're kind of aligned like that we can work asynchronously like this. But I love that this is coming together as something. Yeah, I created that spreadsheet for myself because I was trying to find something like this, and I messaged on Slack to say, ask, do we have like something like this in the works? And I tried to take a stab at it, and yeah, it was really hard to like dig through all the different issues that exist and bugs and everything. Because from my perspective, what I was looking for was similar issues. So, if like 3 or 4 issues are basically kind of around the same theme, if I could tackle one of them, I could like take care of 4. And a lot of that falls under the standardization of settings UI. A lot of people have questions on like, oh, should it be this heading or that heading? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll probably just need to solve this, and then use these issues as a rubric, as in like, okay, the audit that I'm currently working on right now, identifying the patterns and then saying, cool, this is what we're going to go forward with. And what I'm going to use as a test is all these outstanding issues. It's like, can it answer this scenario? Can it answer this scenario? Can it answer this scenario? And if the answer is yes, then we kind of move ahead with that for like the low hanging fruits. Other things that are kind of like bigger picture, which segues into like the research area, is like the searching and settings and contextual access to settings. I know Catherine has some research going on about whether we should place settings within features or have a parent's settings. So, but I'm kind of looking at more of like a journey. If we have like feature settings, should you be like, if you were to go to settings, what would that look like? But I think more immediate that I can probably take action this week is putting together a prototype and some questions around the navigation bar at the top. The whole idea of simplifying the top area so that instant level features and projects and groups kind of get aligned to one another. And there could be some questions that come out there that could tease into deeper problem validation questions, but I think those are the things on my agenda that I feel like I could make a move on this week to make some progress.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful to note. So would you say that these three are the main ones that you plan to, I guess, kick off? Like, do you have one that you're starting in 13.6, for example, and then the next one in 13.7, or are you kind of working on all of them?
I would say, I think the navigation bar is something I'm working on this week, so 13.6 for sure. Contextual access is, I think, going to be worked on from a design perspective, but won't go heavy into it until I find more information from you, because you're doing research on features and settings, and there's a bunch of UX placements of features in 13.7 that you're kind of doing. So issue 331. So that one I think is a big one that will answer whether we go ahead with any solution validation or anything like that. Even for 331, what were you thinking of doing for the, what is it? Is it a problem validation or is it a solution validation?
Yeah, so this one's a tricky one. So it's been it's been open for quite some time, and a lot of people have linked similar issues to it. So what I actually plan to do, it's a bit of a problem validation one, is basically to start with kind of understanding the feedback we've gathered so far. So just in related studies and other description of the problem, and then also answering the questions that are in that issue description, which are basically around what are the features that people need to move, like need more of that contextual access for, and what are some features, what are some workflows or features that maybe make more sense in where they currently exist, kind of understanding how people are navigating settings currently. So I think it's a more of a problem validation and probably a benchmarking of the current experience. So I haven't been able to start that one yet, but that's what I plan for 13.7. And I would say that it's a problem validation one, but I also think it may not be a problem validation in the sense that it's should we or should we not do this. It's more of like how understanding more about the problem. You know what I mean? So I would say if you plan to get started earlier on the proposal, then that also makes sense, because I do think that's likely the direction we'll be exploring. But for example, in talks with Marcel, he has the question around like, are we discussing whether we're duplicating those locations, or is it kind of all or nothing, all settings living in that settings section, or all settings distributed throughout the left nav, or is it somewhere in between? So I think those are proposals to start thinking of if you're already at that stage, but it can be worked on in parallel, basically.
Cool. So that kind of helps me understand the priority. So for me, based off that, I think the priority is the navigation bar thing, search within settings, because part of that could be done independent, and it's it's off the work of like the settings audit, kind of like these new patterns, the
Mm.
expand collapse stuff. What do we move forward with? And that will probably dictate search and settings. So this is like in line in the settings pages. We're not talking about the global search settings. That's kind of like a different problem as well.
Yeah.
And then the contextual access, I think, is for a good solution on that. Yeah, I'll probably, I think in our catch-ups from time to time, and as you kick off research around features and settings, that'll buy me some time to test out some ideas. And as we're going through those solution problem validation sessions, maybe, you know, as we go through, we can just like sense check the designs as we go, and then we'll schedule like solution validation for that for 13.8. So maybe I'll create a thing for that for 13.8. 13.7 is search and settings and navigation bars and groups is something that will overlap 13.6, 13.7 because we're already on like the 10th. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense, and that helps me too. So I will plan the same with navigation group bar because we're trying to benchmark that as well. But then I'll probably go for understanding that placement of settings first. And then since the search of settings is more, I think it's exploratory, but also something you can test in a prototype. It's something that doesn't currently exist. So it's something we don't need to benchmark per se. So I think that makes sense for you to go ahead with that. Yeah.
Cool.
That all sounds great. I didn't want to interrupt. I don't really have much to add, although I did want to say I was going to jump in before and say I finally got a chance to watch that video of your conversation with Nick. I watched it late last week. I can't remember what day you posted it, Michael, but that was really helpful as far as talking about that nav and making distinctions between instance level, group level, and project level settings. I'm real excited about your thought process there. I just wanted to let you know that I found that video to be really helpful. And anybody watching this, it's in our YouTube playlist, so feel free to check it out. I'm fully supportive of moving forward with that approach of consolidating those menus. My only concern is, what do we call that button? I don't think calling it menu, like the actual physical label, or like the actual word that's on the button. So I think you showed a concept where it was the name of the instance, and then you clicked on it and it showed those things, which was really nice. But I think that's more elegant if you have either multiple instances or if it's a self-hosted instance. But if it's gitlab.com, how is that going to work? And all stuff that I'm sure you're working on, but that was my only reaction to that. So I wanted to share that feedback. And then the sequencing of the research and the outcomes all sound great. I think I wanted to go back to that that parent epic that I was discussing, and that was also one of my goals, was to in these themes collect issues that are all related. And so that's what was really helpful about your spreadsheet there. So I can look and see, okay, we're talking about searchable settings. If we were to solve this, how many issues exist out there that reference this or are related to this or could be solved by this? Because I think we had this kind of blanket understanding, static site editor group was going to take over the settings and nav, but there were these epics that were already created, these really well-researched epics, and they had priority 1, 2, 3, 4. Priority 4 was just a bug list, a catch-all, UX polish. And we said, we're just not going to focus on that. But in reality, what we are is we're solving bigger problems. We're not just going to use it as a punch list, but by solving those bigger problems, we're probably going to address at least a percentage of those UX issues. So it was getting uncomfortable for me to discuss in that kind of a stark framework of saying like we're not going to think about bugs, because we are, we're obviously thinking about bugs, and anything that's a really high priority is worth fixing. But what we're not doing, and I think I'm going to try and put this into the epic, is we're not just going to try and clear out a backlog one by one. We're thinking about more thematic and structural problems that will solve 6 or 7 issues at a time, rather than just like, oh, this one tab needs to get renamed, or like this one area of settings is using an inconsistent pattern, right? That's a band-aid approach that we're not looking to take. So anyway, it's helped me formulate that approach over the past couple weeks, being able to look at the work you put together and take a step back and just look at everything.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Oh, Michael, I do have a question around the navigation bar one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be good to have some hypotheses that kind of like what you expect to happen. Because one concern that I have with the prototype as it is, the one that Nick created, is that there's a lot of changes all at once. So in terms of comparing it to the existing experience, it might be a bit trickier because you're not really sure what has improved or what made it better or worse. So that's something to think about. I don't know if you're planning to just test that prototype or another version of it, but that's something to think about, like how to maybe even to test them progressively, like test one aspect and then another aspect and another aspect within the same session. I'm not sure, but it's a question that comes to mind for me with that one.
Cool. Yeah, Nick's thing has a lot of changes in them, and for the solution validation right now will probably be the very stripped back version of just consolidating things. But at the moment it's just basically the top nav gets changed, and I'll loop you in on that once I create this, create the issue and then the questions around it.
That's it.
Right. Cool.
All right. Well, I know the settings didn't have dominated our conversation today, but that's the one that needs the most work. And I don't have much else to update on the static site editor other than the proposal for the new architecture is progressing, and I'm excited. I continue to be excited about it. With this new consolidated editor group, I think it fits in very well. And I think I mentioned this on the earlier call. I can't remember if it was recorded or not, but for the record, I think in the next 2-3 weeks, we should have a deep dive with the editor engineers where Enrique really goes into the thought process on that, presents it, and makes sure everybody understands where we're coming from. I think it'd be a good way to spread the knowledge and get some feedback from the engineers on that team. And then vice versa, we should do the same thing for someone from the Web IDE group to present, sorry, people opening the door behind me, present the sort of technical foundations of the Web IDE, understand, the underpinnings of that, and take a deep dive for the sake of the static site editor engineers who will be working on it as well. So getting that stuff scheduled and working on that transition is going to be a focus of mine over the next week or so too. But otherwise, that's about it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Cool. Well, if there's nothing else, I will stop the recording and we can get on with our days. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Hope you have a good evening and a good
You
day.
too. Thanks.
Bye.